So here we are. This is the Distress Halloween collection. There are 4 products in the release. These products, again, one and done. This is how they're packaged. This is how they're available. I'm going to take you through and talk about it. And hopefully you guys will just be as excited and pumped as I am. So first we're going to talk about this product. These are called Mica stains. Now Mica stains, this is not part of the Distress line at all. It is a unique product in the Distress lineup. It is seasonal. Mica stain, there are no plans for Mica stain to be part of the line. This is going to be a seasonal product. Distress Mica stain is a distress stain. It is the properties of distress stain with a colorized mica pearl in there. Now, for those of you familiar with other pearlescent sprays, for example, the Distress right here, mica spray, totally different. Mica stain has a color. These are just a pearl in a clear liquid. Dilutions also has some pearl sprays, totally different formulation, right? We're talking about Distress. So Distress Mica stain, a color stain mixed with a pearl. And wait till you see when I say mixed with a pearl what it does. So here are the colors that come in this first kit. This is Jack-o'-lantern, Empty Tomb, and Flickering Candle. These colors are not colors that are in the Distress line, but they are formulated with a mixture of colors from the collection, right? So I took 3 parts Crackling Campfire to 1 part Wild Honey so we had a really good time mixing these because I wanted to make sure that these colors, of course, would coordinate with the rest of the Distress palette, all right? So definitely seasonal. The next, this is Bubbling Cauldron. Oh, it's such a good, cool green. This is Crooked Broomstick and Hocus Pocus. Very, very cool colors, very unique mix to the palette. And again, Mica stain is an intense color. Okay, you'll see on the swatches, it's an intense color ink, almost concentrated, if you will, mixed with that pearl, okay? Then we have a sparkle set, and I'll talk about why I wanted to do a sparkle set in the demo, show you exactly the reason. But the sparkle set contains a jar of black glitter. This is called Nightfall, and this is a kind of I don't want to say a chunky glitter, but definitely not a fine glitter. I would say it's more on the chunky side, right? And then we have these mica flakes, and these mica flakes, they're a little finer than the regular Distress mica flakes, almost like a mica crumble. It's actually really beautiful, and this is called Midnight. So you have a jar of each, and that is in the sparkle set. And then this, I think this is the one that kind of created the most ruckus. This is a texture set. Now the texture set consists of a texture paste, and this is a tinted one. This is called Crypt. I'm sorry, Mark, I need my glasses. Isn't that funny? Like, I didn't have them on this one. Isn't that crazy? Like, this is it. I knew, that's why I couldn't read all the names this morning. And I didn't want to say it, but hey, listen, you got to keep it real. This is how it is with the live. All right, there we go. This is called Grave. I can actually see it. That's a texture paste. And the grit paste, this is called Crypt. It's just funny how this is how it is. I have to just, right? Suck it up, Buttercup. You got to just wear those glasses all the time. But that's really why I couldn't even say hi to half the people. I'm like, I think I see the name. Okay, but do I ask for the glasses now? Okay, anyway. So here is what we have. And I agree. I know I see Zoe is Crypt is the best paste ever made. I have to say, I committed to this when I said to Ranger, like, these will be seasonal. I promise that I won't push you right after the live. So I'm sticking with that for now, for sure. So these are the products. Let's take you in, and I really want to get into the demo, the swatches, and really show you what these are, because isn't that it, Tifa? That's just how it is. Like, these are beyond readers. This is just like, I actually need glasses just to see what I'm doing now, because that's how it is. Okay, we're going to get into this first set of mica stain. I kind of like it. It kind of mimics candy corn, right? Just a bit. Let me push these off to the side just so you can see that. And here is the whole idea behind this. Let me bring these guys in first. So first of all, these Distress mica stains, okay? They are only sold in the kit, just like this. You cannot buy just one color. It's sold in the set. You'll see here that it's got that wonderful pearl in this stain. Now, each one has its own unique color of pearl. So it's not like we just added a white pearl. That was very important, because not only do we want the color of the dye, but we also want the shimmer of the pearl. It's kind of like what we learned with alcohol pearls, right? So what is different about mica stain is that this pearl, the way it's formulated, once you mix it up, it becomes permanently attached to the colorant. And what that means is that when you use it, wherever this color goes, it takes the pearl with it. And you're going to see that it actually creates some very cool separation, marbling, veining, all sorts of really cool things that this stuff does. I want to also point out the bottle size, right? Because sometimes when we're watching a video, when we're, you know, maybe shopping online or whatever that happens to be, you're going to look at that and you're going to assume it's one thing, and then you're going to get it and you're going to be like, wait a minute, he didn't say anything. Okay, I'm telling you now. This is the normal size of a spray stain, right? Or an oxide spray. This is normally a 2-ounce bottle. These are in a 1-ounce bottle. Now, these are in a 1-ounce bottle, which is the same size as our normal mica sprays, right? So it's not like we're trying to short you here. It's just that anytime we kind of do something specialized, it's just more cost effective to create a multi-pack of that. And that is why I decided to go with the little 1-ounce bottle. And the reason I did this also, and you'll see from the demo today, is that these are designed to work with these, right? So if you're already thinking to yourself, well, hold on, Tim, by the time I do a journal page or a canvas or something, I'm gonna burn through that bottle. Well, not really. You shouldn't, because if you watch the demo, you'll see that you're still going to want to utilize the spray stains, oxide sprays. I'm even going to demo it with ink pads. So if you don't have the sprays, you can use these with your ink pads. And these will be more of an accent. Now, that doesn't mean you're not going to want more than that little bottle, but it is what it is. All right. So from an effect perspective, here is what it does. And I'm going to show you the swatches. I'll talk about the substrates that it works on. What is so cool about this product is that it is an intense colorant. So you can see this one is jack-o'-lantern, but the pearl, you ready, is connected or part of that dye. So you can see where those water drops and everything are flicked on, the pearl did the same thing. You see how that kind of separates? So you don't get like one finish of pearl like you would with a mica spray, right? If you've ever used mica spray before, this is just a pearl in a clear. And when you spray it over the top, you get a nice, even little sparkly. This is going to react different. So it's important that you guys remember that these stains are an intense colorant mixed with a color of pearl. Now, or mica. We call it pearl or mica. It's the same thing in the chemical world, but I prefer to call it like a mica base because it does have a wonderful pearlescent shimmer. Now, this is on white cardstock. This is on watercolor, okay? You can also use it on different substrates, and that's why I'm going to go through all of my swatches just to show you, because it is important to understand what makes this stuff so freaking cool. This is craft paper, right? So we're talking this is the mixed media craft heavy stock, right? So this is, let me just grab a pack of it here. This stuff, right? So brown craft paper. Because this is a thick craft, right, versus like, you know, a thin paper bag, we still get the colorant, because as I mentioned, this colorant is almost just a super intense dye. And then we also get that mica. You see that? And it is on there. It is part of that. Now, of course, with different substrates, we need to talk about fluming. Fluming happens when you have a surface, and I'll talk about that because we're going to get into black. When you have a surface that is not completely porous and you add so much mica over the top, the paper can only grab so much of it. And if you add too much of it, then of course it would flume, meaning when you touch it, it's going to come off on your finger. This doesn't flume on a porous paper. All right. So this is watercolor so far. This is craft. Now take a look at black, right? So black, what happens, of course, now if you're familiar with inks, this is going to come as no surprise to you, but these are translucent dyes, right? So we can see through that. So on white, we're getting the purest color of that orange. On brown or craft, that's why I was even a little bit exposed, that paper is impacted the color. So now that bright orange becomes more of a burnt orange. Very cool. But when we go to black, black is going to dominate that translucent dye, meaning all we're going to see is the pearl or the mica, which is very, very cool. Now, one of my favorite papers to work on, and I'll show you that on the demo, this is the alcohol ink cardstock black because it is such a wonderful, rich black. And I'll show you the difference between this and say Ideology black cardstock. So you can see just by changing your substrate, the different effects you're going to get with a single color of mica stain. And right now, that's all this is just mica stain sprayed on, dried a little bit, flicked on some water because I love all the little drippity drops, and then that's it, okay? So next, we're gonna start going through the palette because now that you understand the papers, now we're just gonna go through the palette. So I'll just kind of flip this around like, I don't know, like playing solitaire or something like that. Okay, this next color, this is heaven. This is called Flickering Candle. Flickering Candle, it doesn't know what it wants to be. See, take a look at that. It just looks like it flickers, doesn't it? This is like mustard seed meets fossilized amber with a splash of squeezed lemonade. I mean, hello, yellow. Beautiful, beautiful color, right? Hello, yellow. Craft, still get the yellow, right? Not as intense, right? Now we're getting into more of an ochre color, but stunning nonetheless. And we still see that beautiful mica that separates. That's why I keep showing you, because you want to see how that mica is separating. And then of course on black, well, that's just the pearl, but beautiful. Almost looks like pixie dust. Totally reminds me of Peter Pan. Love it. All right. So next up, we're going to talk about Empty Tomb. Empty Tomb, unreal. I love this one for, and the thing about this, and I'll talk a little bit as I get into the demo, there's so many cool things to know about the colors and how we can mix and match that. But Empty Tomb is kind of black soot mixed with a little bit of hickory smoke and pumice stone. So you can see that it has a very cool kind of smoky or hazy black to it. But take a look at that shimmer, right? We put like this gunmetal color mica in there because I wanted it to still have that gray tomb look. I didn't want it to be white. I definitely wanted, and I didn't want silver either. I wanted like that gunmetal. So isn't that crazy that like you look at the paper and when the light doesn't hit it, it's very charcoal, dark, and then boom. Very cool. Craft. Yes, please. Right? So you take a look at that. So good. And then on black, now you'll see what I'm talking about as far as that color of pearl, right? It is that gunmetal color. So it has that kind of dingy effect to it. And this is literally like one pass of the spray. You want to keep that in mind, that even the tiniest little flecks are going to reflect the light. Beautiful for Galaxy. And I'll talk about how to control that spray as well. If you are kind of spray challenged, sometimes people just don't like a spray because they don't know how to control it. So I'm going to give you some tips and tricks on how you can still utilize a spray even if you don't want to spray it. Believe that? Truth. Okay. Next one, let's go into these. Let's go into this next set, right? Hocus Pocus, Bubbling Cauldron, and Crooked Broomstick. All right. So first up, we'll do Hocus Pocus, and this purple, wowza. All right. This is pretty much a blend of all the purples, right? We've got Dusty Concord, Seedless Preserves. We even threw in a little bit of Wilted Violet and Shaded Lilac, but you can see here, look at that. So sometimes you kind of get the reddishness of that purple. Sometimes it's a little deeper. And then look at that mica on there. Wow, I just love it. It almost looks iridescent on this one just because of that beautiful mica. It's so pretty, but you can see the color on that. And what's interesting, especially, you know, if you've ever tried to do purple on craft, it's usually not very friendly because the purple wants to just become very muddy. But take a look at how that looks on craft because it's so intense. You still get those wonderful purple vibes even on craft, right? That's beautiful. And then there is that on black. Hold on. Look at that. Whoa. Oh yeah. Beautiful color. I love that. So Hocus Pocus on that. Then we get into Bubbling Cauldron. I just wanted this very wicked green, right? There's so many greens and I love all the greens in distress, but I wanted a mix of them. You know, I wanted a little citron and a little olive and a little peeled paint and like a touch of rustic wilderness, just because I wanted to get the deep tones, but I also wanted to get that nice kind of vintage green, but I also wanted a little bit of that electro lime, right? That's the cool thing about Bubbling Cauldron. is that, see, it does look like a bubbling cauldron. You just get those really great effects, and especially with that green, that is good. That is good. And then on Craft, of course, changes, right? Deeper tones. So this is still going to be a great green if you wanted to add a wonderful green for Christmas, right? If you're doing any kind of tags and you want to just add a nice green on craft paper, it's going to be perfect even for a Christmas color. It'll be nice. And then, of course, that is going to just be our green pearl on black. Beautiful, right? Crazy to see all these different effects from the same product. That's why I tell you time and time again, play around with surfaces. You could have one product, and if you just play around with different papers, you're going to get something different. All right, and then Crooked Broomstick. No surprise, it would be my favorite. Why? Well, it's brown. Hello. Because it's my favorite browns. It is a combination of a little ground espresso, walnut stain, a little gathered twigs, and of course, a base of frayed burlap. So that becomes my jam. And what I love about Crooked Broomstick, you'll see all those different brown tones kind of show up, and then we have a brown pearl. And this is probably the most challenging because it's kind of bronzy, but it's definitely on the brown side. I didn't want it to be coppery. I just love the fact that it has that wonderful brown vibe to it. And you can see it on Craft. You see what I mean about, like, when you look behind the pearl, you see those really deep brown tones, but then when the light hits it, it creates that wonderful pop. So I think this is good, especially for people that want to add a little vintage antiquing to things without going totally to the dark side. And here you can really appreciate that color of pearl. So you see what I mean, that it's just brown. It's like a brownish bronze is the only way to describe it. It's definitely not copper. It's definitely not gold, but it has just a cool brown hue to it. All right. So those are the mica stains from a swatch perspective. And of course, we're going to get into a demo. Trust me, this is just going to be a really fun live. And I'll explain other inspiration and all that that's coming your way as well for the season. All right, next up we'll talk about, well, let's do this one. Let's do the sparkle one. I've got my swatches over here. And I have them in a bag because in my studio, glitter and things usually is an outdoor activity. But I wanted to still show you the swatches and talk about that. Mario, would you mind grabbing me just a piece of copy paper, just white copy paper that you have? I think that'll be easier to really show you guys how these work and how these look. Okay, thank you very much. Sure. Appreciate that. Okay, because white in the camera just kind of gets a little funny. All right, so as I mentioned, in the sparkle set, there's a glitter, right? That's Nightfall. See, I could read it now. And Mica Flakes is Midnight. Okay, so here's the thing to know about anytime you add something sparkly to a make. Okay, this is like glittering 101. If you go to use a color glitter and you put it on a surface, you're going to have whatever color that surface is impact the glitter. And when I say impact, I don't mean in a bad way. I just mean it's going to impact the overall effect. So for example, on this case, this is Nightfall, right? This is a black glitter. You can see that it almost has kind of a, you see the little white spots in there where, I mean, besides the sparkle, if you kind of look through the glitter, you'll see a little white, which is kind of like a starry night. It's very beautiful this way, okay? And that is because this is applied to a white substrate. Now your adhesive of choice, well, it's completely up to you, right? You can use collage medium. I like using collage medium a lot of times, but I'm gonna be honest. If I want something to really get its bling on, right? Be super shiny, I like to go in with glossy accents. And the reason is because glossy accents is a glossy accent. Meaning when it dries, it's still gonna be shiny. So when I put something shiny over something shiny, if I miss a spot, it's still shiny. Does that make sense? Right? So if you use this glue, which is a great glue, collage medium for glitter, it dries matte. So if you don't get sparkle somewhere, you're gonna have like a flat spot. Totally up to you as far as what adhesives you wanna use. My gosh, you can even use resist spray, which we've done before. So just kind of play around. But this is just on white. Now, if you change it up and you base coat it or you put it on something darker, this is just, I just took a little bit of black distress paint, swiped over that so it is black. And you can see there's my little paint, and I even left a little brush strokes just so you guys could see that. But you can see the difference. I don't know if you can see it on camera. There we go. Can you see the difference in the same color glitter, just how it's applied, right? So keep that in mind. If you want your red glitter to look more red, put it over red. or put it over burgundy or put it over something. So you often can impact a glitter. I know we have a lot of color glitters and that's great, but sometimes you really want it to pop on your surface. If you base coat it with a paint or an ink or something that mimics that color, you're going to get a more saturated version of that color versus not. So it is the same glitter, it's just over white, which still looks magical, right? It's still a beautiful night sky. And then you can put it over black. Now let's talk about this glitter, because you can see that I can't stop doing this because this is pure Halloween nostalgia, right? Any of those vintage Halloween decor pieces always had this sparkly black glitter that is kind of like, you can't even see it because it's so microscopic, but it's like what they call a hex cut, okay? A hex cut is just going to be more, I don't know, more defined. And this is what I want to talk about. Because you might be sitting there rolling your eyes going, oh, Tim, you already talked about coloring glitter and now you're trying to sell this color glitter. Good one, Holtz. Well, listen, you can still color glitter, right? If you've seen any of the videos, you know that I love taking rock candy, right? Glitter, taking alcohol ink and coloring it. So I'm going to show you the black that we did. Well, last time I did this, a black glitter, and I said, oh, you have black glitter. And you can. It's still very, very cool, right? So this is rock candy that has been tinted with alcohol ink, and I'm just going to do a comparison. Let me clear off the little sparkly flecks from this. I'm just going to pour it out so you can see. So it looks black, it's beautiful, I do love this. So this is going to be rock candy, right? And rock candy is very kind of sugary, right? Can you see that? It has all those different particle sizes. See, when you really look at it on a white paper, you notice all the different glitter particle sizes, because that is what rock candy is. Rock candy, what makes it so special is it has multiple particle sizes, so it sparkles and blings like nothing else. It is by far my favorite glitter, and it also doesn't become airborne. It doesn't float in the air. The same rules apply for this glitter, the Nightfall, right? This also will not become airborne. When you use it, it's not going to float in the air. It's just too heavy, but it has a completely different effect and a different cut. And so I'll show you that. Let me put it right next to it. Okay. You can see it from there, but I'll still hold it up to the camera just so you get an idea. I'll even spread it out just to try to be fair of what I did for rock candy, right? But look at the difference, right? Still that rock candy, but look at how just black, and you can see the particle is just more, it's that hex cut, so it reflects the light different, and that's what gives it almost that diamondy look. But you can see, even though we inked this black and we used a lot of black ink, you can't use too much when you're coloring your glitter, otherwise it won't dry, it will clump up because we're using alcohol ink with resin. And that's pretty dark, and I still like that, but that's really why I wanted to do a black glitter for the Halloween release, is because even though I can tint it, sometimes I want something, well, that's just so dark that I get that wonderful effect for Halloween. So that's the beauty of that glitter. Okay, so let me put this back. All right, just so you know, never want any smoke and mirrors. Never want you to think that, like, oh, he's trying to pull a fast one, because I'm not. And you may not like that. You may really prefer more of that tinted black. But if you're really going for something dark, that's it. Okay. So someone's asking, where can we get the items? The items are available worldwide. So wherever people sell your distressed product, you can shop it store, online, wherever you'd like. All right, the next one, Mica Flakes. Okay, these, oh my gosh, you guys, just deep breath, because it's epic. It's like, I don't know, it's like I said before, it's like a mica crumble, if you will, okay? So same thing that I told you about the glitter. Anytime you put something shiny, it's gonna be the same. So this, of course, these are the mica. This is Midnight, so that's the Mica Flakes that come in that sparkle. So you can see here, look at the different particle sizes we did for this one. So you've got some big shards of that, and then you've got this little crumbly dust that goes around. Very important with the mica. This is a synthetic mica, so if you wanted it dustier, you could actually smash it up in your fingers and get it more dusty. But you can see that by putting it over white cardstock, or if you put it over black, you can alter the appearance of the color. So same rules, and just if you learn that tip, that's going to be great for, well, any of your glittery or sparkly things. Okay, again, the beauty of that is just the color, the way this looks. So let me go here, because As you know in the demo, I also talked about how we can tint the distressed mica flakes with alcohol inks to create all these beautiful colors of mica. And of course, you still can and you still should, because it is nice to have all these custom colors of mica. But we're going to go to the one that we did black, right? Because the black is nice, okay? But when we did this, I just want to show you, because this is really important. Anyone that has inked the mica, you already know exactly what I'm going to talk about. Okay, when you alcohol ink mica, it does change the property of it. You see how this looks definitely more fragmented, which I like. Don't get me wrong, I like it. But because we're coloring this with alcohol ink, the resin in that alcohol ink makes this a bit chunky, which is cool, right? Totally great. Where do you see this stuff? Deep breath, you guys. Oh my gosh. Mica Flake Midnight, if I could have like a truck back up to my house with this stuff, I would do it, because, well, it's just, I don't know, it's like ore, or I don't know, it just kind of, it's hard to believe that this is synthetic. But you can see here that color, that kind of gunmetal-y color that we get, and you can see the particles are all dusty. There we go. There's that mica shift. There we go. You see that? I don't want to spill it on the table. But can you see when I'm tipping the paper, can you see the difference in how these work now? This is still great. So I don't want you to think like, oh man, why did I color all that stuff? It's still very cool, but there is something about getting the mica actually I almost did it. Getting it manufactured in that color. And so that's why I did it. And I just like to share that. Again, I'm not trying to convince you to get this. I'm just trying to explain why I did this. Because for those of you that follow the demos and you do it, and I'm so glad that you do, I just want you to always trust that there's a reason why I would do something, and not like, ooh, hold on, yeah, we can get them to buy that. It's like, yeah, I can make my own, but sometimes I just can't make it like that. And especially for Halloween, I love super black glitter, and I like it to be very vintage and sparkly. And then of course for the mica, I know a lot of people are doing cool backgrounds and cool and night skies, and this just has a really great effect and a great look with that. All right, I'm gonna get this out of here before I risk. I totally almost dumped it all over, but that's okay. I would have had Swiffer to the rescue. Okay, perfect. All right, I'm trying to watch the chat. Is everything going okay, Mario? I think I was more concerned about probably dumping sparkle on my table, so I wasn't really paying attention to the chat. I apologize. All right, I agree. Janice said it looks like carbon. It does. It's just really cool stuff. But I want to just reiterate, it's seasonal, so it's one and done. So if you get it and use it and you tell me in March like, oh, you know, are you bringing that? No, no. I mean, that's really it. Is that a tin of custom? It is, Natalie. It's cool. Okay, are you ready for this? Texture. I know the makers are probably sitting there like now going, yay, my favorite, because it is cool stuff. All right, I will admit, I wish I had bigger jars of this, but luckily I went and bought 6 of everything from Ranger because I just wanted to have a little extra stuff for the season. It's just a small jar, but you don't need much for what it is because it's really designed to be an accent texture. But I will say that some of the makers have kind of just devoured this because of their love for it. So my thought process behind this texture set, this is Grave and Crypt, were that if you were going to create Halloween projects, right? Maybe you were going to do a tombstone, or maybe you were going to do, I don't know, like a wicked urn or something. You would just want a little texture to go in and like add an accent to it. Wasn't necessarily how we normally use texture paste, like over an entire surface. So that's really why I just put a little bit in, because you could still use it with your other paste. You could still use it with grit paste and texture paste because that's its base. These are just colored in a unique way. So the first one is the texture paste, and that is called Grave. And Grave is simply texture paste that has been tinted with a stone-like color. Now, could you take regular texture paste? Let me see if I have a jar. Regular matte texture paste. And could you tint it with, say, distress paint? Because that is how I would recommend tinting paste. I don't like to tint paste with ink. I know some people do. They take a little bit of re-inker, and you can, but you know that it kind of gets a little, well, a little slimy, a little snotty, because the ink makes this formulation a little weird. But if you put paint in here, if you tint it with paint, it keeps its kind of viscosity and consistency. So could you tint it with, say, pumice stone to get something similar? Yes, but no. You'll get a color, but you won't get it to be this intense color without liquefying it too much. So that's why I did it. So that being said, you could still mix up a little batch with pumice stone, spread it on, and then use that grave color as a top area. But here's the cool thing about that paste. You can see that it creates a wonderful stone-like finish, right? And that beautiful color. I love it. And of course it remains flexible just like the other texture paste. Very, very cool. But that's really why I wanted to do it. More of an accent to this guy, kind of a supporting role. But the next one, the grit paste Crypt, I will admit, you know, is that one that I kind of had second thoughts and I'm like, oh, I probably really want to add it to the line. Yeah, but maybe time will tell. There's no plans moving forward, but here's what's cool about grit. I said to the chemist, and again, a shout out to Steve, the chemist at Ranger, because he nailed all of these products. And I said, wouldn't it be cool if we could create a grit paste that not only had a color, but also had these little floating specks of black grit, right? So when you think of like granite, right, tombstones, they have those little fleckly specklies of black in there. And he's like, well, Tim, I don't think we can do that because I can't control that the black remains suspended, or does it like all group together in that jar at some point and now you have like, you know, just a clump of black. But he did it. He figured it out. So this is what's cool about this. We have that same gritty texture. Can you guys see that? It's grit texture, tinted in this cool, I don't even know this color. I couldn't tell you to like tint it a color because I don't even know how he achieved this color. It's like frayed burlap meets old paper meets pumice stone. And then it's got these little random size black particles as part of the grit. This, my friends, is magic. It is. So this stuff is where you would just kind of take it with your finger and you can like spread it around the edges of something you want it to look creepy. I also think it kind of looks like, it kind of has a mossy vibe to it to me because that little bit of green. So it could like go over the edge of an ideology urn or something. It's very, very cool. So yeah, is that something, you know, maybe sometime next year I'll say to Ranger like, hey, remember that stuff? But for now, I'm very happy that we have it. And I'm just telling you all this because again, if you love it, you have the opportunity to get as much as you want right now, right? That's how it works. Okay, so with that, going through the swatches, let's get into the demo. Let's talk about how we use it, what we can do with it, and hopefully I can answer as many questions along the way as we can. So just to kind of reiterate, the product is available now worldwide. It started shipping from Ranger this past week, but it doesn't mean it's in every retailer right now. So check with your retailer if they don't have it yet. Maybe they have it ordered or maybe they're ordering it. So don't freak your freak. Ranger is not sold out of it right now. If you happen to go on Ranger's website, let me just tell you this. Ranger has a very weird online platform, okay? They have like a vending machine at Ranger. So just imagine a vending machine. And they put like a certain amount of stuff in that vending machine. And that's what's on their online site. And once the vending machine is out, it says sold out. But that doesn't mean they don't have thousands sitting on the shelf. It's just the vending machine is out. It's kind of like, you know, just because the vending machine might be out of Skittles, it doesn't mean Skittles are sold out, okay? Well, you know, I do love Skittles. Okay, here we go. So just know that, because I know some people look at Ranger and they're like, well, if Ranger's out, that means the world is out. It just means their vending machine is out, and, you know, maybe someday they'll fix that. I don't know. Doesn't seem hopeful, but we've asked. Okay, here we go. We're going to talk about these products. I'm going to try to answer as many questions as you can about that. I agree. Robin said it would be good for beaches too. It is a little on the, you know, it does kind of look like wet sand, but you could use this with the translucent grit paste. That's the other thing to remember, because the base is still grit paste. So if you wanted it to be not as intense, then you could mix this grit paste. Whoop, oh my gosh, I just dropped it. Oh, good, it didn't. No, I got it. Usually it rolls off my foot and then it's gone for good. All right. So this, there we go. We could take this grit paste. Okay, so that's the thing about grit paste you guys have to remember. It's really designed that it can be kind of clunky and bumpy, but I'll show you how to use it with a palette knife because that's my favorite way, and then I'll use my finger. But if you didn't want it to be that intense, you could take some of that, take regular translucent grit paste. So you would want distressed translucent, not the opaque one, because the opaque has white in it. And you could mix it and you could actually thin out that color if you're going for like beach scenes or whatever. All right, good. Okay, Here we go. What black ink should we use with the sprays to create layers? Well, we're going to get into that, Pamela. Good question. All right, we're going to go into that. So first we're going to talk about sprays, because that is a great start off, that question about what do we use for this. And the truth is, whatever you want. That's really the truth, because I wanted to see, you know me, like what if I do, what if I do? So I created 3 samples. I'm going to show you in the demo, but I just wanted to kind of give you some different variations or versions of working with this. So these swatches were created, or these samples, these backgrounds were created using mica stain and using sprays, okay? If you don't have sprays, I'll still demo with the ink pads, but sprays, when you're creating a fluid background, fluid creates fluid. It just makes it easier movement. So that's really why I like to work with sprays. You can see in my tin, just for the demo, I have it kind of stocked with some regular spray stains, right? Those are going to be kind of translucent colors. Squeeze lemonade, yummy. And then some oxide spray, because believe it or not, we can use these with oxide, which I will be honest, I was completely shocked. That's just one thing that I thought would just not be doable, okay? So all these backgrounds are done with sprays and the mica stain. So this first background, so this is done with a little bit of walnut stain, a little crackling campfire, okay? And a little bit of, let me just look in here, a little rusty hinge. I can kind of tell from that undertone. And then I went in with just jack-o'-lantern. So, and I'll demo this, how it's done. But this was just like a spray of jack-o'-lantern, and the rest were all of the mica stains. And look at the effect that I got. Really beautiful. But when you look at the background, what do you see? Well, you mostly see color, right? You mostly see the stain, the dark brown, the crackling campfire, a little rusty hinge. And then when you tip it, you see a little bit of that mica, and it gets very, very fluid, right? Because again, it's probably maybe 1 or 2 sprays and then blended with water. And again, I'm going to demo how all of this works, okay? Then I was like, so what happens if I do this, but instead of just doing a couple of blasts of jack-o'-lantern, I just do a couple of blasts of stain and then really use like probably 4 or 5 sprays of jack-o'-lantern. Well, look at the difference. Sweet mother of mica. I mean, come on. Look at, you see what I'm talking about when I say that the ink grabs the mica? Do you see that, where it almost creates cells? Can you see? I just want to show you the difference. So when you have a little bit of the spray with water, it's going to float over the top of it. But when you use it as a layer and you start flicking water on there, because see, now you can see all the water drops when the light's not hitting it. But then when it breaks, you can see how that mica in that mica stain groups together to create that beautiful cellular background, right? So the more mica stain you use, the more impactful it's going to be on its background, right? Because it's going to grab together. So then I thought, okay, a little bit, a lot. Well, what happens if I go in and use an oxide spray, okay? Because if you're familiar with Distress Oxide, this is a fusion of dye and pigment. You use it on stuff, and if you're familiar with this, we know that pigment dominates dye, meaning when you put it over a background, that pigment is what's going to sit on the top. And this pigment's usually boss. Anytime I've used it, it has rained boss on everything, meaning it doesn't matter if I try to stamp on it or do whatever with Distress ink, this is always going to rise to the top, unless you use archival, and that's a whole nother demo, which I'll do in a little later. So this one, I thought, okay, well, it's probably just going to consume this, right? It's going to cover up the spray. And then I did it. And then I was like, what the what? So there's our oxide, right? Let me just get the light to hit it just right. When you see it, you're like, okay, I can see the oxide. That's what it does. It's going to create that white oxidation. So this is a little spray stain. This is a little oxide spray and mica stain. So my brown would be walnut stain. Let me get that out. Okay. My black, because I wanted it a little moodier, I used black soot spray stain. So those were my dark colors because I knew I wanted it to be intense. The orange, that like reddish color right there, that was some crackling campfire oxide. And then I went in just with jack-o'-lantern because I just wanted to demo with the same color just to kind of see how it was going to work. And I looked and it dried and I'm like, okay, there's the oxide. It came to the top. And then really when the light hit it, and I was like, are you kidding me? The fact that you can see the oxide and you can see the mica, that's a win right there. That's just That's it. That's pure background magic. That's what I love about these mica stains, is that you use it as an accent. Sarah asked, what tin do I use the mica stains? I don't. They don't. These little guys don't really fit in a tin. I mean, I'm sure you could adapt a tin and take it out and just kind of put them in there loose, but they don't. There's not a specific tin for that bottle, because this bottle just doesn't exist in the Distress line except for these three little guys. So there you go. So just so you can see, because I'm going to demo that. And I always like to show you this before, so you don't say, well, would it work with this? Would it work with this? Yes, it works if you use a little, if you use a lot, and if you use it with oxide. Now, whether we're using sprays or not, that would be good. So Connie asks, will the mica come to the top if sprayed first? It depends on how you're doing it. When I layer, and that's why I want to demo, I like to keep things fluid, and so I apply everything simultaneously. But if you, let's just say you started with mica stain and you dried it and then you hosed it down with oxide, I'm not sure. I would have to say probably not. But if it's fluid, then yes. And so that's why I want to demo to show how to get these effects, because I think by keeping things fluid, that's what creates these movements, right? If you want things to blend, remember, wet on wet blends, wet on dry layers. So if I want this blended background, wet on wet blends, right? Wet, or when it's dry, it's just going to cover it up. So if this is dry and I put this dry, it's going to cover it up. So let's go. I've got tools. I've got lots of stuff to show you. I'm going to talk about how you can brayer with this and splatter with this, and there's so many different things. Again, paper choice, that's on you. Do whatever you want for your paper choice. Maybe it's going to be watercolor. Maybe it's going to be mixed media, maybe it's going to be white heavy stock, maybe it's going to be craft, or maybe it's just going to be black. So the first thing I'll talk about is just the black, because it's not much of a demo, it's just really a comparison. So this is the black alcohol ink cardstock, okay? If you're not familiar with this, it's almost a suede-like paper. It has a really cool matte finish. I love it for cards. I use it really only for matting. I know people use this for alcohol ink pearls. They use it with snowcat mixative. I just don't really alcohol ink much on black, but I know people do, and it looks really cool. But I love this black cardstock because it is not, it's a coated paper, but it's not really a coated paper. It's coated meaning alcohol inks can work on it, but it's not glossy. It has a very cool finish. I'll just tear it just so you can see like how thick it is. It's got an incredible core to it. It's a very thick substrate. This is black Ideology craft stock, another favorite, okay? But this is a black printed craft paper. So you can see side by side that just the tone is completely different. Because this is a printed ink, it does have a little bit of a sheen to it. But when you use it with, of course, the mica, it's a different effect. By spraying these on, let's see, I thought I had one already done and dusted, but I guess not. Oh, here it is. Cool, so I don't have to do it. There we go. I'm like, I thought I prepped this. Okay, this is showing you Bubbling Cauldron. So that same green, just sprayed on the craft stock, right? Pretty, right? Great, dries. And on the alcohol ink black. When you see them though, of course, side by side, I feel that this one is just more intense, more green, and this tends to like fade out or get absorbed into the craft paper. That's just kind of my findings. I like how splotchy this is. This tends to sit on the surface, and probably so because it's for alcohol ink. So my mica stain sits on the surface more. Where this, can you see like how feathered this is? I just felt that when I sprayed this on the paper, it soaked in more. No right or wrong. I'm not saying, oh, that this worked and this didn't, but it certainly created a different effect. And I liked this effect better than this one. That was just my opinion on that. But that doesn't mean that you can't use it on whatever papers, but play around with whatever your surfaces and finishes are. Okay, I've got my sprays. I'm getting out my splat box because that's just how I roll here in the studio. So splat box, Stampers Anonymous. You can see I've used this one for, well, since last year. So I'll continue to use it until it falls apart. Sometimes things rip out of it because I glue it in, but look, it is what it is. It's good. Then we're going to take a paper towel. I just like to use a paper towel because it absorbs quite a few things. And we're going to do some backgrounds, okay? So we'll start with watercolor paper because that's just kind of what I wanted to do, but that's completely up to you. Stacey said she used black alcohol ink cardstock for die cuts. I totally agree. I think more, the makers that I know use and love like alcohol ink cardstock, we just use it for things other than alcohol ink because it is a great black paper that is very thick and very matte, and it's black to the core. So when you are doing things like die cut sentiments, it's really, really nice. It's cool. All right. It is a pretty splat box. Yeah. It's got a lot of stuff, resist spray and all of that. Okay. So here's what we're going to do. Let's just do a background with, I don't know, let's just do some warm stuff. I have no idea. Maybe I'll mimic what I just showed you so you can see how I achieve that. Okay. A couple things you're going to want. Spray bottle, right? I'm just going to use a distress sprayer because I want to mix it. You're going to want a heat tool because I like to dry layers in between. And then whatever sprays you want. I'm going to take a few other colors. I'll use a little aged mahogany. A very underrated color, squeeze lemonade. It is a really electric yellow. Okay, not as deep as mustard seed. It's definitely more on the light side. So we're going to create, whenever I want my background to blend, a couple sprays of water to start, right? It's not soaked. It just has a little water. And that means that as soon as the ink touches it, it will have movement. Okay? So it doesn't really matter at this point which one you start with. Meaning, do you have to use the mica first or the oxide? It doesn't matter at this point because everything right now is wet. Aged mahogany. Yeah, right there. Okay, we're going to shake these up. Now, usually with a shaker, anytime you have a spray that you need to shake, it's always better to kind of ring like a bell. Okay, because if you shake it up and down, you could risk some of that spray coming out from that spray nozzle. If that's still your jam, just remove that. Grab a paper towel or a cloth. Cover that up, and then you can shake it the way you want. But just if you kind of get in the habit really of just kind of shaking it side to side, all we want to ensure is that there is no mica left. So see how there's mica there? Not mixed, okay? So that means just kind of turn the bottle as well, because all we're doing with that mixing ball is just getting it to kind of knock down that mica, because we don't want it to clog, right? There we go. Okay, almost there. If you lay them on the sides, you'll see, like now that I have them ready, that's going to take that mica pearl, and instead of it all being built up on the bottom, it's going to slowly move it to the side. So whenever I'm using sprays, that's pretty much what I do. Okay, ready to go. So now I'm just going to go in, add just a spray of that. Got to use a little flickering candle because that's just going to be beautiful. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I would die cut my splat box when I'm done because it's just cardboard. Okay, look at that. Ooh, yum. Okay, a little flickering. There we go. Okay, that's a good start. That's all we need to do. Now you can see, well, I can see, there's a bullseye of mahogany. I don't want that. So I'm going to take my sprayer and I'm just going to start dripping. So the cool thing about the distress sprayer, if I squeeze it quickly, I get the mist. If I slowly squeeze it, I'm getting those drops. You see that? So I'm creating that little dropper. That's why I have this sprayer, because I want the ability to mist, but I also want the ability to create these little drips. And that's what's going to start breaking this up. You can tip it. Oh, it's just like inferno. Okay, so once that's done, we're going to dry it. So this is where we start kind of seeing things happen. And I would love to dry this and hold it up close to the camera, but I mean, I might, but I kind of don't want to, but I'll still try it. Can you see the little sizzle? No, you can't really see it. You can see the mica on there that just kind of starts to what I call it sizzle. It just kind of, you can see it's getting all shimmery as it's drying. The beauty of this though, is that you can always go in and add more mica stain, but you cannot take it away. Meaning, if you were to really saturate this with mica and get so much pearl on there, and you think, oh, let me just go in and try to dilute it or get that off, it's not going to work that way, okay? It is designed to bond to that ink colorant. So unless you're able to get that ink colorant off, which you wouldn't, you're not going to be able to get the mica. That's what you have to remember about mica stains, is that it is a mica pearl fused to the ink. So once you shake it up, that's really one. I mean, you can see how it, like, let me show you in the bottle. Like, watch when I tip it. You see how it's stuck to the ink? How that ink, even though it looks fluid in the bottle, it just kind of clings to the surface. That's because the formulation. I'm not a chemist, but that's really what he created. All right, so here's our first layer of our background. So again, you can see where that mica stain really started to kind of move and maneuver. I didn't use a lot, right? It was just a couple of sprays here. Look at that little flickering candle. Yum. We're going to keep going. We're going to go back into this and add more. So I'll just bring the splat box back in. I don't really care that stuff is there. And let's go in and add more. I'm going to add a little bit more flickering candle because that's what I want to do. I want to put that there. Now you can see right away, whoop, how that's sitting on the top, right? Can you see over that aged mahogany that we're still getting that? Because the mica is a pigment, it is going to sit on top of that color, but that doesn't mean we can't go back in and just add different colors and different effects. So I'll take a little bit of walnut stain. Now this one, I'm gonna go for more of a splattery look. So I'm just gonna slowly squeeze the spray stain, and that's gonna give it kind of a more of a drip, but I'll talk about how else you can splatter. I'm gonna go in and just try to add a little darkness to the edges, okay? Take the sprayer, again, just start moving that around, and don't be afraid to like pick up your background, like get it the way you want that to move. And once you're happy with some of the movement, dry it, right? If you dry it, that's gonna kind of, look at that flickering candle. Can you see it right there? Oh, look at that. Okay, don't be afraid to dry things. If you look at it, you're like, ooh, I like it, good. Then like it, dry it. That's really, really important. Bonnie, we don't work in GSMs here. It's just weight. So watercolor, the Distress watercolor is 118 pound cardstock. So if you Google like 118 pound to GSM, it'll give you the conversion. So watercolor is 118. The craft that I was talking about and the white, the heavy stock, this is 130 pounds. So it's actually thicker. And I think mixed media is like 114 or 115, which is, 110. Ah, there we go. I was close. Okay. So take a look at this. All right. So now we've got color and we still have that mica stain. Now we're going to break it up, meaning it's dry or dry enough. It doesn't have to be crispy dry. But now I'm going to go in with the water and I'm going to just create some droplets, really kind of bust up the party here and there. If I went in and touched it with a paper towel, which I'll do kind of on this side just to show you the difference, right? This is absorbent. Look what it did. It lifts the color and creates that white spot. You guys see that? See the white spots right there? Okay, this side I didn't. This side I'm gonna dry. Keep in mind that whenever you're adding water or stain, see how it's creating that new blend? Because the magic of distress, if you're new to the world of distress and you're like, what is all this hubbub about distress? Distress is designed to be reactive with water. And some people use the term reactive with water simply because when you wet it, it moves. This is designed to actually intensify and blend when it wets. It actually wicks out. So you can see the edges of this. You see how that dark ink is going around the edge? That's because distress is formulated to what we call wick, which is when it gets wet, it pushes itself away. And that's what creates effects. If you dab it, it's going to create a white spot because you're lifting off the colorant. If you dry it, the colorant will remain. So you'll see that like how it's drying, kind of move your paper to get the effect that you want. And that's why I wanted to show you. Is it going to lighten it? Of course it is, because it's still reacting with that layer underneath. You added water, you are reacting the colorant. But what the difference that you're going to see is from spraying and dabbing and spraying and drying, what you're going to ultimately end up with. Okay, so let's say on this point you have these big, well, I just call them sludge, right? There's a little sludge mark. We can get rid of that, right? We're just going to cut that. I can dab this off, right? It doesn't create that much impact. If I ever have these giant drops that just don't want to dry, I'm not going to sit here and just cook it, right? Instead, I'm just going to go in and dab that off. Okay, here's what we have. So let me just hold it the right way. Remember, this is the area that I sprayed with water and dabbed it off with a paper towel immediately. We create a beautiful soft water drop effect. But let's say you want this really cool outlined effect. That's what we got here. The difference, we dried this. Remember, distress wicks. So that color was pushing out to the edge of every little droplet, which means that if you didn't want droplets, you could have essentially taken this, taken a stencil, sprayed water through that, lifted off, and dried those Harlequin water dots, and it would have outlined the Harlequin shape. Does that make sense? It's going to always wick around whatever the shape is. This happens to be a little modular globular shape because it's water, right? It has this kind of fluidy movement, and by drying it, that creates those intense outlines. No right or wrong, but knowing why and how you achieve that, that's where it's at. So now let's look at how it impacted that mica, right? The mica moved with the colorant. So wherever you have that lift, you'll see that the mica cleared out from where there wasn't. It's still going to remain as reactive with that ink because it's always going to be attached to it. Hope that makes sense, okay? Moving on, what other things can we do? Well, there's a lot of cool effects that we can do. Let's go into like an ink pad world, and we'll even combine some oxides in here. So let's create a background. So for a background, I'm going to work on the craft mat of my media mat. Now, this very important tool, it's an important tool that you use it, right? This isn't designed that you want to keep it and frame it. You can see that mine is really starting to take a beating. It just does, right? It just will. That's the whole part about this, and that's why you can get replacements for these. But you don't need a replacement until it just no longer does anything, right? But for now, just because it doesn't look pretty, it doesn't mean that it's not functional. Otherwise, well, that would be me, okay? So now we're going to go into some mixed media, just because I want to change up the substrate. I'm going to switch to ink pads, just to show you that you can, in fact, create beautiful backgrounds with ink pads. Let's do something a little bit different. So we'll take a little hit of seedless preserves. That's going to be my distress ink. We'll take an oxide of purple. This is going to be some Victorian velvet. This is a bit on the kind of mauve-y side, right? Little evergreen bough. That's going to be interesting. Don't need to use much of that. Then we'll take some crushed olive. And I even think I'll throw in just a touch of walnut stain. That's my palette. That's kind of what's going on over here. Just to start, I may totally change my mind. Now you have some options. We can take the colorant and actually spray the ink, but by doing so, you're mixing colors. So just think to yourself, okay, even if you didn't have this product, if you were going to do a background and you had purple ink, would you go in and spray black spray over it to wet it? Well, no, because you know that that would turn that color something different. So I still like to use these direct to the surface, and I'll use my inks for backgrounds, okay? So I need to wet this. I'm gonna take some water, create those droplets. See how that kind of makes that ink come alive and become a little electrified. We're gonna take some mixed media. We're just gonna start by dabbing a little color. You get what you get, you don't throw a fit. But while it's wet, we're gonna add some of that color, okay? Really important. I agree. I love the ink pads as well. Can mica stain be used with stamps the same way distress sprays? Absolutely. But you want to make sure that you clean it. So you're still going to need to use a baby wipe or whatever to get the mica off. But yes, the mica will come off, no problem. Love bubbling cauldron. Oh my heck. All right. So you can see what I'm doing with this mica spray. I'm trying to kind of go in a very similar area that I have that base color. Okay. Going in with a little bit of hocus pocus. Excellent. Perfect. And then we're going to just add a little bit of water. Not much, just some movement. Okay. When you're using water, use water as a tool, not as a hose. I know a hose could be a tool, but you see what I mean? By just using that, see how I just started to get that spray just to have a little bit of movement, but I'm still getting all the undertones of what's going on here. The other thing you're going to remember is that we introduced some oxide in here. So this little creamy spot that's kind of staying true to its color, that's an oxide. That's Victorian velvet. That's going to start giving us a really beautiful kind of milky vibe. This little blue that's kind of showing up right here, that's also an oxide. That's evergreen bough. So by introducing an oxide, you're getting that really intense color because it is a dye and a pigment. Okay. Perfect. Perfect, perfect. All right. Excellent. All right. So far, here's what we've got. So there we go. Now we can start seeing the introduction of that mica stain and what it's doing and where it's going. But we're still going to go back into our inks. So I'll add a little bit here, go into some evergreen. So this time, I'm just taking my background and I'm just kind of pressing it down in different areas. I'm not taking the whole thing and pressing it down in one print. I want to utilize all those different elements of color. And each time we add a layer, we need to dry, right? Because we want a layer. Wet on wet blends, wet on dry layers. So we dried it, we added more wet. We dried it, we add more wet. And that's what's going to build up the layers of this. Okay, so here's where things are starting to get really interesting. I'll just try to point that out in this process. You see this little cloudy haze? Why are we getting that? Oxide, right? But you see the intense color? Why are we getting that? Ink. Then do you see the mica and that really intense purple and green? Why are those colors more dominant than the rest? Because we used a mica stain, and that's why I was trying to tell you that the color is very concentrated in these bottles. I would say it's more concentrated than even a spray stain. I would go that far to say that, because you don't need to use a lot to get an impact, right? But you're still going to end up ultimately using it because we're going to add some more layers to that. So that's what we have right now. I'm going to go in and still work from this, but I noticed that I really want to have a little bit more, I don't know, a little something in here. So I'm going to go in just to add, let's see, what do I want to throw in there? I'm going to warm this up. I'm going to go in with a little bit of Wild Honey Distress ink. So I'll just find a clear landing spot, right? I don't want to go through something that's there, but if it looks clean, it's clean enough to put some ink on there. Don't forget that we want to add a little spray to it. Then we're going to go in and just add some of that warmth. But I'm still going to go into everything else just a little bit. Ah, see? See what that's doing right there? Yeah, okay. Look at that. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Ah, Connie, you're asking for Christmas. I'll talk all about Christmas because, well, I mean, I'll talk about it during the demo, but I'll even say it at the end. These are the first 6 colors of the seasonal collection. So I'm telling you this now because there are 6 Halloween colors, and yes, there will be 6 Christmas colors next month, making a complete palette of 12 colors. So there's a red, I mean, if you have both collections, you will have a palette, the Roy G. Biv, you'll have a spectrum that you can work with. So yes, there will be another 6 colors coming out for Christmas. But again, both are limited. Meaning, if you wait until Christmas to get these and they're gone, can I now get the Halloween? Only if they're somewhere, okay? We're gonna keep going back into this. And anytime I work from a palette, I just like to kind of see what's going on. Oh, look at that. See, that little bit of wild honey there has been good. And we're just drawing it each time. We're gonna add a little mica, and I'll talk about a different way that we're gonna add it now, because now we have some layers, right? Now that we have some layers going on, the thought of me now spraying onto this background is not something I would entertain, okay? I didn't mind doing it on my first layer when it was wet because I wanted it to blend, but now if I were to spray this over the top, it would essentially spray it over the top. I don't want that. I want it to still have this beautiful fluid movement. So now what? What can I do? Well, we can just clean a little spot. We can still take I'll do a little bit of hocus pocus, that's fine. Just want to make sure it's mixed up. Once it stays mixed, it really doesn't settle very fast. So you can see that I'm kind of just picking that up. And now I can just put some right there on the mat. Don't need much. Now it's there, so I don't want it to be like that. So you can just take your fingers and you can break that up, okay? Just make sure if you wipe off your fingers really quick, it's not going to stain too bad. You can see it stained a little bit, but the longer ink sits on your hands, guys, the more it's going to stain. So I know people ask all the time, how do you keep your hands clean? Because I'm constantly just wiping them off. Okay, gonna go in here. Let's just kind of tap into that. I did add a little bit of water. Why? Because I wanted this to be a little bit more fluid. And we're gonna dry it. So now I'm getting beautiful purple, but I know this purple is gonna have mica. All right. What happens if you lay into the color on your other side, the black surface part where the purple and green are? It depends on the colorant. For example, let me just dry this real quick just to show you. That's a good question. So look at that. You see now those splatters are luminous with mica. Why? Why are just those splots luminous? Because we used mica stain and we dipped into it. We wet it and we dipped into it. So it creates a whole nother effect. So yes, we're getting the fluidness of the mica stain in our background, but now we're getting these drips and drops of really outline identified mica because we applied it this way. So you're asking what happens if we put color over there? It really depends. If it's a dye, right? If it's a stain or an ink pad, dyes are translucent, so you're gonna impact that color. So yellow on green is just going to become more of an electric green. But if I wanted to go brown, for example, and really have it sit on the top, you would want to go in with an oxide of that kind. So let's say we wanted to add like pumice stone because we wanted some sort of gray flecks on there. We can totally do that. Let me just get a little towel, we'll wipe this off. So we can take a little bit of oxide. So this is pumice stone. This is going to be kind of ghosty. Again, I'm going to spray that. I'm going to break this down because if I don't break it down and I just go into it, it's going to be one big splotch. And I just want to add a few little elements. So you talked about kind of that dark area. So we'll go there. We're going to add a little bit here and we're going to dry that. So because it's an oxide will sit on the top. Okay. A warning about the glass mat, it's addictive. Once you have it, and I mean, I'll admit, when I first designed the media mat and I used it, I was so used to not working on it that it was almost clumsy. I'm like, I don't really know, and I just don't really find any value in it. Once you understand, it's like, this is where your wet goo is, and we make a right-handed and a left-handed. Some people prefer to like dip from this side or whatever. But once you kind of get your groove figured out, it's such a great surface to work from because you can spray stuff. It's very easy. Like even if I have overspray, a little bit of water, and that's it. Like, so you're always kind of working in a clean surface. It's just nice. So look at that. So now we've got that pumice stone oxide that sits over the top of that. Ooh, isn't that good? All right, one more thing and we'll work out from there. I'm gonna add a little bit of brown. Shocker, right? I'm just looking for it because I know I have it out here. There we go, little walnut. So let's say we wanted to add an effect to a background, but we didn't want to create a drip, but we're still going with kind of liquid stuff, okay? I'm gonna take that. I'm gonna take a little bit of walnut stain. Perfect. I want it to be a little darker than that. If you had ground espresso, you could totally use ground espresso, but I'm just going to go in with a little bit of black soot. So both of those were spray stain. I'm going to take my splat box. There's my background. Look at that. I mean, hello. Yeah, okay. Now I'm going to go in with a splatter brush. If you're not sure what a splatter brush is, this is a splatter brush. It's called a splatter brush. Okay, we make it for distress and for alcohol ink. It's the same exact brush, it's just packaged different, just so you guys know that you can use it for either medium. I do have one that I only use with alcohol ink because it will have solvent that stays on the bristles, and I don't like to mix solvent with my dyes, but it is essentially the same brush. So a splatter brush, just like a bunch of little plastic spaghettis that are designed to splatter. Okay, so how I'm going to work with a spray is I'm just going to sweep up this colorant, okay, and I want it to be fairly wet, but also fairly thick. So I don't tend to add water to this. I just want to really load this up. I might have to, but I'm just going to try not to. And I'm sweeping this up until you don't see much of the color, which means it's probably sitting on these bristles. I'm going to grab from the middle. The goal is to not really touch the bristles. Pull it back towards me and let these go towards my background, okay? And we're slowly doing it, right? So you can see I'm only letting a few go at a time, and I'm moving this around. You can watch what you're doing. Once you understand the control of the splatter brush, again, it is your friend. I prefer a splatter brush. I know some people really love, you know, the whole tappity tap of a paintbrush. You could totally go that route. But to me, a splatter brush, I have just honestly ultimate control. If I'm really close, I'll get a big splatter. If I'm far away, and I just let this go, and it's really, I'm just kind of, see how I'm like letting that go through my fingers just a little bit each time, and that is creating this effect. Look at that. You see those cool little brown, black spots? To me, that just anchors that background. It like pulls all those layers together because we have that dark. Obviously, if I would have tried to spray brown, that would not have ended well. Even if I tried to do my little trick of, you know, doing the spray and dipping in there, I would have risked getting a lot more dark than I wanted because I really wanted to keep this a very colorful background. So keep that in mind. Maybe you only want a little bit of mica stain. Maybe you did a card, right? I'll set this aside. Maybe you have just a card here. I'll just get a piece of craft stock. Isn't that a cool background? Beautiful, beautiful. It's always the right tools, but listen, just give yourself some credit. I see so many makers out there that are new to this or try something new and get so discouraged because you didn't nail it the first time. you have to do it, and you have to do it more than once, and you have to continue to want to try to figure it out, or figure it out in your own way. Just because this technique worked for me, you may not like that. You may like, hey Tim, I know you're kind of doing it this way. Look, I want to I want to play the electric guitar. Like I want to just bang bang, or banjo, whatever you're doing. Just do what works for you at the end of the day, but give yourself a little bit of grace when it comes to learning new things and just having fun. Creativity should be fun. It should not be frustrating, discouraging, and it should never feel like work. It should feel like a creative escape. It should just be playtime. But look at those backgrounds. I mean, can you even? You may have done backgrounds, but that whole mica stain, it's a whole nother level, guys. That's really why I thought for the season, what better kind of product to release than something that's just going to create magic right there. Good, okay? So if we had a background, going back to just my piece of card, and maybe you were doing something very clean and simple, okay? Here's a couple of things that we can do. So first, maybe we'll take, oh gosh, what color do I want to do? What do I want to do? I'll just take this because it's here. A little hocus pocus. It's the closest bottle to me, but I probably really want to use flickering candle, but I'll use that another one. Okay, just going to shake that. So one thing, I can just put a little bit down there. I can take the card and I can do this. And some people do this like in a, you can take a little plastic, like lamination pouch, anything, and you can create that little drop right there. And we can dry this. And this could be something that you simply want to put maybe a little stamped image, right? Maybe you have a little witch hat, or I don't know, something for Halloween, or maybe not. Maybe it's just a flower or something. But we're just creating that little drop. And I just want to show you kind of the difference in that. Okay. So putting that on there, you're going to get that color and you're going to get that pearl. Super simple. Could you go in with a brush and wet this out? Absolutely. Another thing that we can do is we can just take, I'll just flip it over because this is for demo purposes. I'm just going to mix this up. Here we go. Make sure it's mixed. Just take that second to look. I know we kind of want to do this because really I've been playing with these. Will microglaze set the mica sprays so they are permanent? Yes, they will. Yes, microglaze will always set distress inks, stains, sprays. So because this is a mica stain, it will set it so it is permanent on paper. Permanent doesn't necessarily mean washable, but yes, on your cardstock it is. But just keep in mind, like again, I always talk about this. This isn't coming off, right? So this isn't fluming off on anything. There's nothing, because it doesn't come off unless you wet it, or as I always joke, unless you lick it, right? So if you're not wetting this, it's not going to come off. But to answer your question, if you want to make sure that it's permanent because you want to seal it, distress microglaze, you can just put a little on your finger, rub that over the top. I will say that microglaze kind of impacts mica a little bit. In my opinion, it does, but some people don't notice it. I seem to notice it. Okay, so here I'm just going to pick this up. So that was just a little jack-o'-lantern mica. I'm going to go back to my splat box. I'm just going to pick some of this up, and I'll show you a couple ways. So this, I'm just going to go in. We're going to do a little splatter, because this, maybe I just want to splatter it over the background. Now I'm going to go in. I'm just going to add a little bit of water, just to show you, like if you add water to a stain, whether it's a mica stain or a regular stain, and we go in, you're going to get bigger drips. So I'll kind of try to stay that in the center so you can see the difference. So when you add water, you're going to get bigger splats. Cool. When you don't, you're going to get tinier splats. Also very cool. Okay. If you want different direction, turn your paper. You don't have to be a contortionist with this splat brush. Not a good idea. You never want to be splattering towards yourself, because you're going to splatter yourself. So always splatter away from yourself. And again, we're just going in. All right, perfect. This, you just clean with water. That's all you need to do. Take this out. Let's dry it. The thing about mica stain as well is you don't necessarily see it until it's dry. Okay? If you stamped on top. Allison, we're going to talk about stamping, and I'll give you my suggestions for that. Mari, would you mind grabbing the Distress Archivals in the spinner? It's like 6th row down, just so you can just grab the whole set. So here is the splat on Craft, and you can see there's the color, right? That's the beauty of mica stain. We always see the color, but it's when the light hits it that you see the mica, right? Beautiful, beautiful, Beautiful. Wow, so good. See, and it doesn't move, doesn't do any of that. So to answer the question, what do we stamp with? Well, my ink of choice, if I'm going to stamp on top of a background, and this is my ink of choice, whether my background is paint, stain, oxide, whatever, is going to be archival ink, Ranger's archival ink. Now, in June, we finally got these after years of waiting. We finally got these in the regulation size ink pads, but the difference with Distress Archival and regular archival, you can go back and watch a video if you want to learn more. This is the same archival formulation, which means it is an acid-free, permanent, waterproof, oil-based ink, but black soot is a very rich black. So all of the archivals are oil-based, so you could use any color of archival, but I like to stamp with black soot over jet black. There's just a difference. And again, I don't want to take the time to demo it now, but I've done it in a video. This is very intense, and you'd ink up your stamp, and because it's oil is going to sit on top. And I say oil meaning it's an oil-based dye. So it's not wet and gooey like a pigment. It's still a dye ink, which means it's going to dry fairly quickly on a porous paper. But that ink will sit on top of the mica. It will sit on top of oxide, any of that. And of course, if you have a stamping tool of any kind, right? If you have a platform or just something where you can do a repeat image, that's another thing to keep in mind. If you're ever doing a background that has a lot of pigment on it, it's just a good idea to stamp it, let it dry. Maybe you want to give it a second or third stamping, because if you want that to be super intense, then you might want to stamp it multiple times. But yes, this archival ink will stamp over these backgrounds beautifully, which kind of brings me to just stuff, and I'll talk about it more as we wrap up the video, but I still have stuff to demo. But we're going to be doing different brand releases for the rest of the month, right? So next Saturday is Sizzix, followed by that is Stampers Anonymous and Ideology. The makers all have this product, so you're going to see makes, so you're going to see cards, you're going to see die cuts using this product, you're going to see vignettes and collage. I just really wanted to explore like how the product works, but as far as like how does it look if you stamp on it? We'll show you that when we do Stampers Anonymous. Or how do you use it, on a die cut? How's that going to be the effect? We'll show that in Sizzix. So you can trust that you're going to see these products in play, in use throughout the month, and you'll see exactly how it can be incorporated with other products, right? So that's the cool thing. All right. So next, we're just going to talk about another just kind of different way that we can create backgrounds. Okay, and that's going to be and then I'll get into textures, but that's going to be with brayers. It's another thing that I absolutely love is a brayer. Now these are distress brayers. For those of you that aren't familiar with it, it's a completely different type of rubber than a red brayer. It's kind of soft, right? But it's not super squishy like a speedball brayer. It's just kind of in between, and it is designed for distress mediums. It's great for oxides, for sprays, for spray stains, and of course, mica. So that's going to be the thing to keep in mind. All right, so let's take a piece of card. I'll just do this one. And then we just create just a quick background, okay? Just gonna do a little spray, a little water there. Let's just do a little bit of that. It's a little spray stain. Let's go in and see. Let's do a little bit of this. Little oxide spray. Got a little salvage patina because we can, right? Put that on there. And let's see, what else do I want to throw on there? Let's throw in a little bit of, we'll do a little bit of crushed olive just because. And just because I want to add a little punch, I'm going to go in some prize ribbon. For those of you playing with prize ribbon, it's an intense one. Don't be afraid to play around with it with other mixes. All right, so I've got some spray stain, oxide, ink pads, and I'm just going to do a background. So first thing, I'm just going to go into that. All right, throw that in and dry it. So anytime you're even dipping into color, just, I say it, get what you get and don't throw a fit. Put it in there and move on, right? Don't worry about that. That's going to end up being very cool. The fact that you're like, oh, let me spread this out, or let me go back in, I didn't cover it. No way, just see what you get. That's what creates it's the serendipitous of all of it, right? Seeing how colors move and blend and layer. I just think sometimes we get so caught up in our heads that we just don't let the product show us the magic that it can. Now, I'm going to go back in here, and so I want to point something out. You see that? That is what I call just like the sludge of doom, okay? Unless you're really going for a dark spot, chances are, even if I try to navigate around it, I'm going to hit that. So I just get rid of it. Just take a towel and right? Paper towel, whatever you want, and just dab it. Just get it out of your sight so you don't have to worry about going around it. But now I'm going to go back into this and just do another layer. Look at that. Now all of this magic is happening because we have that whole combo of stuff, but we're going to go in and utilize the brayer. So you might be sitting here going, what's the brayer for? The brayer is just going to show you a different way that we can go in and add these layers. Now each time you go in and do a dip, you're going to get a different effect. Because see how the size of our little droplets, they're changing, right? That's good. They're just like little, just beautiful little droplets. So now my touch, the tapping is just getting a little bit lighter because I want these to be tiny little pixels of perfection, right? Look at that. See? By not smashing it, we're creating tiny little dots. If you went in and just boom, 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 that water droplet is going to become, well, the size of a dime, okay? So it's even goes down to how much pressure you apply when you're putting your ink on a surface to determine how big the splotches are or any of that. And the more you kind of utilize this, the more you realize that every tiny little dot is going to create something. It just gets better. You're only as good as your next layer. So if you don't like something, just go in and add to it. But now you'll see, I mean, and I'll try to point out like the colors that we put in there and what is creating the magic that is there. Now I still haven't added any water to this at this point. So water to me is always just kind of a cool effect on the top, even if you don't do anything to it. Because it's always going to break up those solid masses of color, right? You can even see that. The other thing that's important about water is I incorporated oxide. Remember, I used salvage patina as an oxide spray. Well, oxide is only going to oxidize when it gets wet. So I know I sprayed a little bit on the craft mat, but the more water you add to oxide, the more it's going to oxidize. So now take a look at this background, right? So now we can start to appreciate all the different colors that we're getting, right? The darker tones of brown. I mean, even just look at that little bit of green that was in there, right? We talk about throwing in a little crushed olive and you're like, why would you want to do that? Because you might get that little magic. You might not, but you could, right? Then we have salvage patina. Whoop, magical color, beautiful, right? It's a beautiful soft color. But wait a minute, what's making this punch of blue just appear out of nowhere? I see the patina, but what's that all about? That, right? Prize ribbon. A little bit, right? I didn't go all crazy with that. I didn't get all willy-nilly, because if you do that, well, that would completely overpower the background. So when you're applying your mediums to your craft mat, you don't have to do equal amounts of everything. It's a little bit of that, and you can always go back and add more. But if you just kind of trust that creative instinct and play, you will enjoy that process. All right, so get to the brayer, Holtz. What is that all about? The brayer is just another cool effect that we can get on this. So let's say we wanted to add mica in a different way. Maybe I'm going to die cut this background, or I wanted something that just had a little bit more of a kind of an interesting fluid movement. Let's go into some crooked broomstick. Okay, I'm going to shake this one up. Good deal. All right. Elizabeth, I was afraid it was going to be muddy. Well, the reason that the reason it doesn't turn to mud, it's all about drying. You need a craft tool to dry in between. If you just kept dipping and dipping and dipping when it's wet, wet on wet blends. So it would have turned to mud. All those colors would have just went together and just mud. Question, will that rub off my hands? Will this, the mica? No, not at all, because it is bonded to the ink. There we go. Yeah, I agree. It touches a prize ribbon. That's it. You need to do that. You need to throw in, and it's always a good challenge, even throwing those colors you don't always use. Right? I know Tifa does a challenge where she's like, you know, let's pick a color that we don't normally use. That's a really good thing to do. If you're creating a background, let's say you're going to do your Halloween backgrounds, pick something out, maybe it's squeeze lemonade, that you don't normally use in your everyday, and throw it into your background and see what happens, because you might just really be acquainted with some old friends right there to be like, okay, here we go. All right, we got a little crooked broomstick going on. It's all mixed, right? I don't have any mica down there. So next I'm just going to take this and I'm going to spray it right across the mat. Now it depends if I want this intense or if I want it light. I want it light. So because I want it lighter, and remember, I'm just going back to, I kind of show you something and then I always like to go back to it. If you do it intense, right, full strength, or if you wet it down, it becomes a little lighter. So if I just did it like this, it would be an intense striation. I want this to be a little lighter, so a little water is just going to kind of thin that down. And we're going to take a brayer. Now both brayers are made out of the same material, they're just two different sizes. This is really good if you want to kind of do a one pass on your background, or maybe you want to do this on a journal page or a canvas. Excellent, excellent thing. Be sure to always keep it on its feet. That's one thing that's just going to keep it from going flat, or it's got that handle to hang it. I'm going to go with the little sports car one, just for this background. Normally I'll use this one on bigger backgrounds, but for the card I'm just going to do this. So here's what we're going to do. We've got the kickstands up. That means the feet are up, not down. And I'm just going to roll through this lightly to pick up the drips. You see that? So you see how I just like lightly did that, because if you push, that's going to push all of your medium off. And I'll show you that in just a second. Then with the very lightest touch, I'm just going to go in and I'm going to just drag it over my background. Okay, did you guys see that? So I didn't go in and steamroll it, just light. So again, light touch rolling through that, coating that rubber. See, that's the beauty of how this is made. And then I'm just going to lightly drag down. Ooh, that was a good drip. Okay, I'm going to go one more time. I'm going to go one more time. One more time. Okay. On the kickstands, dry it up. So here's what we got. A whole different. Yeah, no steam rolling, Mel. Because here's what's happening. While this is drying, I'll just show you. If you take a brayer and you push down and you push that medium, that's where you have the medium. There's nothing on here, right? You're like, wait a minute, I just put it on there. You just push it off. You didn't load the brayer, you push it off. What's that? Mario's pointing out a question so I can help you out. That's all right.
I'll just read it to you.
Okie dokie. Sure. Mario's got a question. Okay. Question. When using a laminator to straighten the paper, will that affect or melt the mica? No, it will not. Mica is not a meltable thing. Nope. It is not impacted by heat at all, because this is hotter than a laminator, right? A heat tool is hotter than a laminator. This is like 340 degrees. So no, it will not melt the mica at all. Okay, so here's what we got. It's a great question. I like these questions. So did you guys see that on the demo, that if you push, you're just pushing the medium off and you're not coating the brayer. If you lightly roll, then you're coating the brayer. Get it? Cool, right? Okay. There we go. Those are our drips again. All right, so here's what we've got. Here's our background. You ready? Here's our background. And you see those drips that are coming down from the top? You see that beautiful crooked broomstick? See that beautiful mica drip where it just looks like kind of just a grungy shower on there? That's the beauty of brayering on a stain, right? Because if we were to spray this and try to get it to drip down, chances are that color would dominate the entire thing. And I'm going to still go in and add a little bit of water to this because I just want to break it down even more. So I'm going to go in again, add some little splatters of water, because water always breaks up what's going on. Okay. Dry it just a little bit and just kind of do some reveals. So I don't have to go over the whole thing like that, but occasionally I'll just kind of pop that in just to create a reveal. And the other ones, I'll have an outline, right? Just like I showed you at the beginning. Sometimes you just want to put it on there and take it off so your spots are very faded. And other times you're going to put water and dry it because you want your spots to be outlined. It doesn't have to be either or, one or the other. It could definitely be both. But do you see how that adding that water now made those drips become part of the background? It didn't look like the last thing. It didn't look like we just put it over the top. It looks like, well, wait a minute, those drips look like they're kind of under 5 or 6 layers. But that is the beauty of using all of those products. And obviously where the drip ended up, remember, like that was the dismount of the brayer, more mica was applied there, and I love that, right? So that's just a happy accident. So keep that in mind, like even with the dismount, if you roll it this way and stop, maybe the next time you roll that way and stop, right? So then you end up with kind of these intense spots of mica, different areas. But it's just something fun to kind of show you how you can apply stains, especially the mica, in different ways, right? We've brayered it on, we've dipped into it with ink pads, we've sprayed it on, we even went in and splattered it on. There's so many ways that you can utilize this product to get a completely different effect and yet still use it with your stains, your oxide sprays, your ink pads. It's just, it's magic, you guys. Magical, magical. So how to clean the brayer, easy thing to do. The beauty of these, of course, is that you can simply just grab it, pull these wire handles apart. I'm just going to dip it in a little water that I have over there, and I just prefer just to take that off and clean it that way. It's just easier for me, right? Because now it's completely clean, and then you just put that in because these are designed to bend apart. So that's the easiest way. Some people just kind of roll over paper towels. Some people will do this. You do you, right? Whatever's going to work. Let's clean this up. A little bit of water. Cool. All right. On and off. So same thing. Remember when you're cleaning your mat, start on the mat, finish off the mat. Don't clean from here onto the mat because that's where you get this curl if you push sludge into the edge of your craft mat. So always clean away from the mat. There we go. Okay. Next up, let's talk about a couple of other things. Okay. Yeah, the brayer is everything. Let's talk about some texture. Whew. When it comes to texture, and Mario, just tell me if I need to wrap it up at any time because I've waited all year to share this product launch. So, okay. All right. So we'll talk about, again, a texture paste and a grit paste, right? One is going to be like fluffy texture and one is going to be nuggety grit. Completely different viscosity and product and effect. When you apply these, because it's an effect paste, so to speak, utilize it however you want, right? I think that if you were going to create a background, and again, I don't want to get into makes for this demo. This is about the product. You're going to see the actual makes later this month. But what you can do is get some cool stencils that will create effects. These happen to be the mini scale stencils that I do with Stampers Anonymous. This one, like look at this grime stencil. How cool is that? We can use that one. Or maybe you want to get a little crackly bit. Maybe you want this to look like, you know, fractured stone in there. Okay, well, I can put that on the corner of my card and just use a little bit of paste through there. The difference in the mini, of course, is the scale. So just because it's all of this, you could position this stencil however you want and just go into it and create that crackle effect. Maybe you want it to look like cobblestone, right? Maybe you're going to create something where you want it to look like rock, or it's a strip of paper, or it's a mat. You can totally use this stencil with that paste to create a stone-like effect, or of course brick. And you know, Zoe Hillman, she is like the brick queen on that. But yes, it would be very cool with brick because texture paste, and I'm going to demo that in just a minute. Texture paste, like I said, is a tinted version of the regular Distress Texture Paste Matte, which means everything this does, this will do, which means it could absorb color and all of that. How do I like to apply it? Well, I like to apply it with a palette knife. This is not an infomercial. It's only telling you what I use. So Distress palette knives. Why do I have that? Because I'm super particular with these. Ranger does a lot of palette knives. Dina does palette knives. Everybody has their preference of like how flexible and bendy they are, what size, what length. And I know that Ranger has a set, maybe there's like 4 or 5 different shapes in there, and I just never used them. And I always wanted more of these. So that's why I said, can't we just take my 2 favorites and put them in here? Because I feel like I'm wasting the other ones. I have no use for them. So here's why I like both of these sizes. One is a long flat. This is excellent for applying. I use this to apply crackle paint because it gives me the best crackle versus a brush. I like to use it for applying glue if I'm trying to, you know, glue like some thick substrate. I like to use it for gesso. Anything that I want to get a nice thin coating of something, I like this one. Anything texture related, I like this little sports car. It's like a little trowel. It's got very nice pointy edge, but it will allow me to go in, pick up some of that medium, even out of this tiny little jar, right? Picks it up perfect on the back of that palette knife. And then we can apply it to whatever, our surface, to show you. So we can place this, let's say you want some like really cool grungy, granity marks going into a background. Maybe this was something inked, maybe it wasn't. But how you're going to apply this is you're just going to press down first and then skim. Press, skim, press, skim, press, skim, press, skim, right? And the reason we're skimming is we want to see our pattern. If you apply this and you don't skim it off, you have too much medium, and when you lift off the stencil, everything collapses, right? And when you skim this, you're just moving it over that substrate. And that's why I like a plastic one. A lot of people prefer a metal palette knife. I just don't on a plastic stencil. I feel that more often than not, that metal will grab my stencil and kind of bend it up, right? So I still have plenty of medium there. Just gonna set it down. It's all good, right? I don't need to tape anything because once you do your first pass, it pretty much sticks that to the substrate, right? So that's what it's gonna look like. The dismount is simply a lift, right? So that is lift it off. Don't slide it, don't do anything, and look at that. Oh, cool grit and grime. So all those little passes, very cool, right? So what's another way we can do this? I'll just do the same stencil just to remind you about texture paste. Texture paste is your ability to create texture. So I can still go in, swipe and skip and swipe and skip and all of that. Then I can take what's on here, it doesn't have to be much, and I can go over that area and just give it a tap. Just take that palette knife. Now for this, you can see I'm holding onto the stencil to do this because, well, it wants to lift that off. It wants to grab that, okay? But here's what it's going to do. Let me just get a little bit more up there too. You could always smooth it out, but I just want to show you kind of the effect or impact we could still get. Ooh, I'm gonna take that little chunkity bit. Okay. All right, same thing. Dismount. See the difference? See that little, if you swipe it, you're going to get a smooth layer. If you tap it, you're going to get a little bit of a nuggety layer. Now this is not going to be textured like grit paste, but it's definitely going to give you a different effect, especially if you're trying to create stone or grungy effects. Pretty simple, okay? Really that simple. This, you're just going to put in water and off you go. Okay, anything left, you can put it back in the jar. In this case, there's not enough left for me to do that, so I'm just gonna clean it off with a paper towel and off you go, okay? So when it comes to working with the texture paste, I'm a palette knife guy. I just like to either go through a stencil or swipe it on something, but I just wanted to demo just a couple of ways and give you some stencil options that you might wanna play with, or you can just kind of go for it and use however you want. Now the grit, that's a whole different kind of animal. Can you use the grit? There we go. Can you use the grit with a palette knife? Absolutely you can. You can still do the same thing with a palette knife. Most of the time I would start with a palette knife, but then I like to go in with my fingers on that one. So let me just kind of show you. I'll take another piece. There we go. Usually like to just take some out at first, apply some. So let's just say this was a vignette box or a frame or something. I'll just go in first. Let me pick this up. I should be working over here. It just makes it easier. I just think sometimes it's off camera. Okay. I'll just apply some first with a palette knife just because it's easier if you can push some of it down first, because you see how it likes to roll off. So if I just go with my finger, let's just say I had this on my finger, and I try to get it to go onto paper, you see how it doesn't want to come off of my finger? So that's why I normally start with a palette knife first, just to put some in there, and then I'll go in on the surface and kind of finesse it with my finger, because you can spread this stuff around, right? It can get pretty thin and still have great texture because this is grit paste. Grit paste is made with granules that will stay gritty when it dries. And so see how I can, well, you'll see, I'll hold it up closer, but I can spread it out as thin as I want. I can just go right along the side of that card, and I'm working on the craft mat part. Let me just go a little heavier here. All right, so I'm just gonna really beef up that corner. Ah, that's nice, nice. I can scoop all that up so nothing is being wasted, but my finger is now able to just provide a little, yeah, a little grungy grit. And I love how you can really break it up, and I like how you can fade it out into something super thin. So even that thin area here, that's gonna dry, believe it or not. That will still bond to the surface. But look at what we can achieve with grit paste just using your finger. So sometimes I was tapping to get peaks, and sometimes it was almost like scraping my finger off on the paper. But all of that texture, so I can wipe this off before it dries, this will dry just like this. And when it dries, this medium becomes translucent, okay? When I say translucent, it means it's going to go to that color of grit paste. I have the swatches, I cover the swatches, I lose the swatches. Here we are, okay? This is this, right? So when this medium dries, it will be translucent with that color. Right now, it just looks opaque. So just trust it. It's going to get that cool color. Isn't that neat? Very, very cool. So this is a great effect that you can do. And the thing about paste, it's not just for paper, you guys. So if you find like a Halloween thing at the dollar store or the craft store, maybe it's a little resin figure, or maybe it's wood, or what, these pastes stick to all of that. So you can apply this paste onto metal. I would, if I'm doing metal, do a little steel wool or something to give it a little bit more tooth. Wood, no problem. Resin, no problem. And you can put this on, let it dry, and then you could go over it. And there's all sorts of different effects that we're going to show later in the season, like adding crayons over it and all sorts of cool things. For now, it's just understanding the properties of the product, the difference between the grit and, of course, just using the texture paste, right? Very cool. So far, so good. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Okay. All right. Let's see. Is there anything else? I've already talked about the glitter and sparkle. Okay. One more thing, and then I can wrap this up, right? Okay. Ooh, that was another one I did. Look at that. So here's what I did. It's like my little thought box over there. So I thought, what if, I just did a brown background and I wanted to put purple over this, knowing that this was stain. Would that mica stain be intense enough to actually cover brown? Well, there's your answer. The answer, yes. So this was done with that brayer technique. So I did my inky brown background first, just like I did this one, but it was all just brown, brown, brown. And then I'm like, with purple. Of course, that one I wanted more. So if you want more, bigger brayer, right? You see the difference. If you want a little bit, use the sports car. But if you wanted more, I went in with the big brayer because then you could do one pass. But anyway, that's how I try it out first. Because how do I know if it's going to work? I try it, right? That's how you know. Someone said, does it shrink when it dries? It does not shrink when it dries. No, grit paste and texture paste maintain their integrity on that, which is good. Another cool surface, this was in my little thought box over here, Ideology Bouquet. If you're looking for creepy flowers, for gravestones, tombs, anything for Halloween, this is part of the everyday line. These are all paper flowers that are wired. And these are fantastic to use stain or inks or even watercolor. But mica stain, you can make some really cool kind of black flowers or green and make them look like they're dead. And oh, that's another one. All right, let's get into this. Focus, Holtz. Focus. Okay. I wanted to see if I use just regular texture paste, because you may have seen one of these demos where I talk about distress texture paste. I'm like, if I just use texture paste, how will the mica stains, how will they work? Will they work just like spray stain? Will they be different? Will they not lift? And so that was kind of my what if thing. So I took a stencil, one of my favorites, just kind of a distressed harlequin, placed it down, took regular texture paste, took my little palette knife, right, a little sports car size, put that in, skippity-doo. So I like when you're doing backgrounds, just be a little skippy, because then it leaves you kind of landing places for imagery, right? If you're, whatever you're doing. All right. Then you let it dry, right? It only takes maybe 10, 15 minutes for this stuff to dry. It dries totally flexible, right? Because it is texture paste. But what makes this texture paste so unique is that it is designed to absorb water-based colorants. Absorb water-based colorants. That would be mica stains, watercolor, distress ink, oxide, anything. So then I started spraying it, and this is what I got, okay? Now, not only do I have this very cool, beautiful, luminous tag, so this was just mica stain, okay? I didn't use any other colors of distress stain, although you could have, but I really loved how pearly it was, but here was the shock factor. Look around the texture. I don't know what it is, but something had almost like a magnetic attraction where the pearl, like, seeped up into the edges of the texture and kind of created that little highlight or outline. I don't know why it did it, but it did it, and I'm happy it did it. I love it, but why? No idea. But I love just seeing these colors and just how like vivid that is. But then when you tip it, it really outlines the texture, because we know that sometimes texture can kind of get lost with color, and normally I'll lift it, which I think I'm going to try in this one. I haven't tried that yet to see if it lifts, but I'll tell you in just a second. Right? But that was the thought process there of like, how would this work? Would this stuff still absorb into texture paste? The answer is yes, but what I didn't anticipate was that little bit of of pooling magic around there. So I have tags already done and dry. Let's do it. Okay, let's take this. I'll get my splat box again. I just like to use a splat box if I'm doing sprays because it just keeps from endless cleaning of overspray. That's it. Okay, it just that's the whole thing that it keeps up. All right, I just saw that question. Was it totally dry? Was what totally dry? Was this totally dry? Yes, totally dry. It was. I just saw another question. What was the difference between this and mica spray? Mica stain is a colorant with mica. This is just clear with mica. That's the, but then of course all the other magic that I've been sharing in the demos. Very, very cool. It is magic. Okay. It's cool. So we're going to see it in action. So of course this is texture paste. So this is distress texture paste matte, because matte is going to dry matte, but it's going to be totally porous and flexible. So it's going to absorb the colorant. And then we're just going to go in with some different colors. Okay, so we're going to start with a little jack-o'-lantern. Just spray that on there. Take a little flickering candle. All right. Did you spray while texture paste is still wet? Oh, it's dry. It is dry, it is dry, it is dry. You don't want to spray wet texture paste. It'll turn into chewing gum. Really, it's not great. There we go. Okay, a little flickering candle. So flickering candle, right, because it's yellow, if I overlap some of that jack-o'-lantern, we're going to get kind of a very cool fade in there. Then we're going to take a little hocus pocus. That's what we want, right? A little purple. And each time I'm just kind of giving a quick glance. Like I said, it's not a big deal on that. And then we'll even go in with this one, little bubbling cauldron. And I think on this one, I'm going to splatter a little empty tomb on this one when we're all done. Okay. Let's put some of that up here, and I'll even go a little right there. Now I'm looking at this already, and I know I want some more colors. So you can do this wet or dry, but because I want my colors to blend, I'm going in while it's wet, because we know from the beginning, wet on wet does what? Blends. There we go. Okay. So here's what we've got so far, just so you can see. Just a nice application, not tons. Doesn't really look just looks wet right now. Doesn't look like much is going on, but we're going to start drying this. Okay. There you go. Dedicated splat box. Mel, I was that guy. You can ask Ted, Mr. Stampers Anonymous. I used to have dedicated splat boxes. I had one for like glues and glitters and one for this. And, you know, in true Tim style, I just grab whatever's close and use it. How do you clean your stencils? Lisa asked. For those that you may have seen some comments about a lasagna tray. So I called it this by mistake. I still don't know what was in it, but this is something that food came in from Costco. And it just so happens that it's a great tray, and it just has cold water in it. And so anytime I demo, if it's a brush, if it's a stencil, you just throw it in water, because this just dissolves all you do is just take it off with your finger and then dry it off with a paper towel. So I don't like to scrub my stencils because you risk bending them. So yeah, after the demo, I just take them out basically and dry it off, because by the time the demo's over, really all that paste pretty much dissolves off of it. Lasagna tray. See, there we go. What was in it, Mario? I know I said lasagna, but Mario would make homemade lasagna. He wouldn't make Costco lasagna, but
barbecuing something or pulled pork.
Pulled pork. There you go. See? Yeah. Em just said pulled pork. There you go. You know it. And I did it because really it fits the large stencils perfectly. That's what I was going for. That pan fits the length of that stencil really perfectly. Okay, so I've dried this, but it's not 100% dry. It's not crispy dry. So I still want to go in and create some movement. Water, you guys. Water is movement. Water is what's going to create all of those great effects, right? And I'm dripping it. So you don't hear that. You really don't hear much because I'm doing that drippy motion. See that from the side? I just like that better, but look at what's happening. Before I dry it, I'll just give you a close-up. Like, look at what's going on. That's where those sprays just kind of do the dance and start to just wick and and maybe that's what is making the mica go around the face. And maybe it won't do it this time. Maybe that was just a fluke. I have no idea. I never know why something does what it does when it does it, but I appreciate it. I certainly do. This is so good. I mean, I say that because that's normally what I would be talking to myself. Don't we all do that? You know it. You celebrate your creative victories. When you got this, you're like, yes. Nobody is in the room, but that's okay. I'm just here with you guys. We're all friends here, all makers. Pork pan. Okay. I think I'm going to start calling it the pork pan because that's classic. That is it. That is it. Who suggested pork pan? I don't know. Is that Casey? That's funny. I'm going for it. All right. Okay. Oh my gosh, you guys. I can't wait to hold this out. He did it again, so I can tell. Maybe it was the water because I didn't notice it the first time. So, and I did water on this one too. So maybe it was the water that did it. But see the difference? Like, you see how flickering candle? Like, that's really why I called it that name, because it seems to literally light up whatever you put it on. So these are the same colors with the exception of flickering candle. So this one is a little bit more moody, which I like. But this one with that little candle, like, you ready? Look at that. Look around the edges. Shut up. Oh my gosh. So cool. Oh my, like, seriously, I can't even. I just can't. I'm so excited. And really, I mean, I can't wait until you guys see the Christmas colors because, yeah, you're going to just want to have all 12 so you can just have magic all year long. That's really why I got extra because, okay, it's seasonal and I get it. And I'm sure some people are going to be, you know, angry at me, you know, mid-year when I pull out these mica stains and be like, what? But hey, you know now, like, I'm going to want to use them all year just because of the color and mixing it around. But look at that beauty. Wowza. Okay, so here's the test. Here's what I want to know from before. Usually with Distress Spray Stain, if you put it on texture paste and you dry it, which is what we've done, and I spray it or I go over it with a wet towel, usually I can get the colorant to lift from this paste to kind of highlight it a little bit. I don't know if it's going to do it with the mica stain because this colorant is more concentrated than what is in a spray stain, right? Because we needed it to pack a lot of color so you didn't feel that you had to use a whole bottle on one project. And clearly, I mean, this is still my first set and I've been using it now for well over a month and doing things with it. So I can attest that it actually works. So what I'm going to do, because I don't want to lift any of the other color, I'm just going to take a paper towel. I'm going to wet it, right? So I'm just going to, I don't like to use a baby wipe for this because I think it's too wet. So you can see already how reactive that is. And I'm just going to lay the damp side down over the paste. Just press down with my hand and just see if it pulls any of that color. And it did. Sweet mother. Whoop. That's what we want. Now I'm going to do a little bit more drippy because I want my background to not have the texture of the paper towel, although I like that. And sometimes I even shop for paper towels. But wait till you see this. Okay, question. Can you spray stain on your mat and paint with a brush for more control? Absolutely. The same way I sprayed it on the mat and did the splatter brush, or when I sprayed it on the mat and pressed the cardstock in it, yes. So all that this, and I sprayed it on the mat to pick it up with a brayer. So you can spray it on the mat and pick it up with a paintbrush and just use it as pearlescent watercolor, right? You can totally do that. So if you just wanted to use it as watercolor, you could spray it, or you can just unscrew it and pour some in a palette, and you could watercolor with this because it's going to be color, and that mica is connected to that color. Does grit hold color? Good question, Valerie. It does not. Grit paste, unlike texture paste, does not absorb color. Only texture paste does. That's a great, oh wow, look at that. Oh, we still have that outline. Oh my heck. Okay, so here's the difference. When you're like, what did he do? Why? So the wet paper towel, all it did was by putting it over the top, there we go, there's my paper towel, right? By putting that over the top, it absorbs. The cool thing about texture paste is that it is a medium designed to absorb and release color just like paper. Because sometimes you'll have a paste that when you get a colorant on there when it's dry, it's like a sponge and it won't give it up. There's no takesies backsies. And that's what I love about Distress Texture Paste is that it takes color just like the paper does, right? You can't, it's almost like you can't see the texture where in some areas because it's just as saturated as that. But I also love that it will give it back. And sometimes giving it back, see, I love this effect because I can see my pattern even more. So now the question, because I want to know, what happens, can I go back and do it on a background that was dry for more than a day? Well, because I did this one yesterday, we're going to find out together. Okay. That's what it is, right? So, wet paper towel, let's see what happens. It should. Maybe it won't be as much. I'm not sure. All right. The answer is yes. Woo. Okay. Some more little drips because that's how I roll. Oh, and could you go back and lift again and again and again? Yes. So every time you would go over this with a wet paper towel, it would lift more color. Excellent. Perfect. Okay. We are going to splatter a little bit of empty tomb because I need to. I really want to see that black silvery gunmetal in there. That's the best part. Yeah, I really like the texture of this paper towel. See that little texture? I'll show you. Like, you see how you can kind of see it? It's not much, but it's definitely in there. It kind of gave this tag a little linen vibe. I like that. Wow, see, like that's really pretty. I love just seeing a little bit more of that. And like I said, if you went over it again and again and again, it would do that. But we still have that outline of mica. Oh gosh, just imagine like a flourish or whatever. Crazy cool. All right, let's do a little splatter of some empty tomb and then we'll wrap this up. Okay. Here we go. Doo-doo-doo. Doo-doo-doo. So I'm going to splatter. So I'm going to choose a splatter brush, which is in the pork pan. So I got to get that out. That's it. It is now the pork pan. I like it. Yeah. So I'm just drying it off.
There's so much stuff in those pans at Costco.
It's not just the pork? Okay. Well, it doesn't have to. I mean, you could find like just a plastic thing from the dollar store or whatever. But yeah, all the empty tomb, please. Yeah, but it's a good color, isn't it? All right. So a couple things to know about a splatter brush. I just want to tell you, if you clean a splatter brush, you really want to get these little spaghetti pieces as dry as possible. Okay, before and that's only if you cleaned it. Normally, I wouldn't clean it in between mediums. I wouldn't. It would be fine if it had a little bit of color left over, right? But because I had it in the water, I just want to have this as dry as possible. So see how you can just test it. If it does this, it's ready to go. But sometimes if it's too wet, then the pieces don't want to splatter. They just kind of want to stick together, and then you're not going to be happy with the results. All right. So we're good to go. So we're going to take empty tomb, right? That's the mica stain that is kind of hickory smoke, black soot, but it's got this gunmetal in it. Oh man, so good. Now I don't want to spray it on because that would just cover everything. Instead, I want to splatter it on just to create the effect. So I'm just going to spray some of this out. Ooh, look at that. Okay. Sweep this up. This is all about just sweeping it up, and I do the sweeping motion because I want to pick it up onto the bristles. I don't necessarily like to dip the splatter brush and stuff because I think you just get too much medium. But that's just my preference. You do you. I'm going to take this, pull this back towards me, and just start like releasing it. Just really splatter. I mean, I'm just going for it. I don't necessarily want it to be a crime scene, but I want some splatter that's visible. Okay. Now I'm going to go for some bigger splats. So we have the technology. That's a little bit of water right there. See, that's just going to create bigger splats from the splatter brush. That could be like a little faster, right? So see, it's going to create bigger splat effects. I'll even focus some right there, and some right there, and some right there. Okay, let's dry it. Well done. Okay. Okay. I agree, Donna. You'll be happy. Like I tried to say this really for those that didn't catch the beginning. I really tried to say, like, you know, I didn't want this to come off very sales-like because honestly, as much as I care, I really don't care. I'm a designer that likes to design product for me, and I'm truly grateful that other people like it and are excited about it. But you know, I'm not connected to the sales side, much to people's dismay. I'm not that person. So I don't ever like to come off like that, but I also just want to be really clear because I don't want someone disappointed that it's like, well, why didn't you tell us we probably couldn't buy this, you know, next month, you know, maybe you can, you know, maybe it won't sell like that, but knowing that it could is what matters. So here we go. Look at that splatter. Look at those little pearly dark thing. Now, if you didn't want your splatter to be pearly, you don't have to use empty tomb. See, because my splatter is just as pearly as the background because that was a mica stain. If you wanted to do black paint because you wanted to be more of a contrast, that's fine, but I do love that color. Because that color, I mean, I like the fact that it's splattery, but it doesn't overtake the background because it's kind of that gunmetal-y look. So pretty cool, right? Seeing the micas. I love the idea of brayering it on. I like the idea of just, gosh, adding all of those wonderful drips. So remember, this is the one that we actually, you know, sprayed on and dipped into that because we can. Gosh, all these different backgrounds. There's so many things that truly we can do with all of these different mediums. So one last thing, I keep saying one last thing, one more thing, is how you use these, right? Because sometimes people just truly kind of get a little, I don't know, they kind of shut down when it comes to something sparkly, right? Sparkly is your friend. So I'm taking out the ones where I already have that black base because, well, I've already explained why I prefer that. But some of the things that would be incredibly cool to do with any of these effects is, and I saw someone actually mention that in a comment, you could take resist spray, for example, spray it through a stencil, and then put glitter on there. Now, anytime you try to attach glitter with the resist spray, you're going to get some particles, but not tons, because this is a very thin adhesive. If you want a lot of glitter on there, you would want to use something like a translucent or a transparent texture paste, which Ranger makes, or glossy accents. Just take some glossy accents, squirt it on your craft mat, take your palette knife, the flat one, because we only want a little bit, because remember, glossy accents is not a thick texture. So if you put a lot on your stencil thinking, oh, well, hey, it's going to build up. No, it's just going to seep underneath your stencil. So this is going to allow me to lay a stencil, skim it over the top, which then provides that liquid, put the glitter on there, shake it off, and then it would stay on there. But the great thing about this really is about glittering elements or glittering die cuts. You know, when I create this, I like to create cardstock that's just, you know, black cardstock or black painted. Do your die cuts and then go in and glitter it. A lot of people do it that way. I don't, and I know it drives people crazy because they kind of feel it's wasteful. But here's why I don't like to glitter die cuts afterwards. And that's because if you've ever used like a chunky glitter on a word, for example, you know how when you glitter it, the glitter kind of hangs over the edge of your die cut, and now your die cut looks like a chia pet, right? It's kind of like hairy because we'll see like the little speckles go outside the lines. So usually I'll decide what die I want to use, figure out how much space I need for the die cut, right? Meaning I wouldn't do this entire sheet of paper if I only have one word. That's wasteful, but I would lay the die down. Normally I'll take a pencil or something, just draw around it, go in with my paint, put my glossy accents, do my glitter, make sure that it's dry, rub it down, and then I would die cut through this piece. This would ensure a clean cut, sparkly thing. You know what I mean? If you've glittered a die cut, it's weird. I don't necessarily like the whole little chia pet looking thing, but that's just kind of a tip. Same thing if you ever want to die cut these. This is synthetic, so it's going to cut out. As long as you have a nice thin layer like that, that's going to just cut out and just be beautiful. So just some ideas of what we can do when it comes to, you know, our wonderful sparkles or playing around with all of our textures. There's just a lot of fun that I hope you guys are inspired with this Halloween release. I sure am. I'm excited.